Cause, a principle, aim, or movement that because of a deep commitment, one is prepared to defend or advocate. Karibu. Karibu is a Kiswahili word that means welcome. Welcome, you found yourself in a peaceful place, a place where you can grow and develop, and we hope grow and develop to your fullest potential. This is a podcast that we hope will expand your mind and raise your consciousness. Welcome to The Cause, conversations on music, history, and democracy. Woman must not depend upon the protection of man, but must be taught to protect herself, and there I take my stand. Susan B. Anthony. Welcome to The Cause, conversations on music, history, and democracy. I'm your host, Rayland Rabaka. This podcast explores some of the greatest causes of human history, and, dare I say, human herstory. Civil rights, social justice, gender justice, democracy, and so much more. Today's episode is devoted to a movement that forever changed democracy in the United States, the suffrage movement, the struggle by women to gain the right to vote. This is the companion episode to our previous episode on the Abolitionist Movement. I wanted to sort of take us back and do a bit of historical grounding in the 18th and 19th centuries before we take on some of the great causes and great movements of the 20th century and later the 21st century. I have a long-standing preoccupation with social movements, political movements, cultural movements, artistic movements. I don't believe that individuals make history. I think it's only collectivities, really groups of people binding together, coming together for a great cause. That's really often how herstory and history are made. And so today, I want to talk about a movement that often, if we were taught about it in K through 12, it seemed to be mostly in passing, very, very quick. You got a couple of quick names, and then they move on to something else. Today, we want to take a little bit of a deep dive into the suffrage movement. And part of the point here is to spark some conversations. I hope to spark your curiosity, and you will go and stop by one of my favorite spaces, the library, and check out some of these incredible works on the suffrage movement. Throughout this episode, we're also going to see how the suffrage movement helped to lay the foundation for the women's liberation movement of the 1960s and 1970s, and then some of the incredible remixes of women's rights that are going on in the 21st century. So sit back, relax, put on your headphones, and listen up and learn. Welcome to The Cause. We live in a world that is most often patriarchal, if not outright misogynist. And so we live in a society where it's very easy to dismiss or outright erase women's culture, women's contributions, women's lives, and women's struggles. And so here is an effort to turn some attention to a movement and to members of the suffrage movement who are often overlooked outside of women and gender studies departments, outside of Women's History Month in March. And so, again, I don't have to wait. We don't have to wait until March to really explore women's lives and women's struggles, women's contributions to American history, American culture, democracy, broader society, politics, economics, psychology. I could just go on and on and on. And so, again, I believe a lot of our conception of women's rights, many of it does revolve around the suffrage movement. For me, it's just really interesting how little often many of us know about the suffrage movement. And so, again, here's a little lesson in love, love of movements, and particularly love of feminist leadership, love of womanist leadership. Really, really powerful examples and models can be found in the suffrage movement. Another one of the things that I'm doing with this episode, I'm trying to make sure that we don't sit up here and reinvent the wheel in the 21st century because of historical amnesia, because of cultural amnesia. I'm trying to make sure that we are able to draw on some of the most magnificent models for social change in American history. The first thing we have to do is explore the question, what was the suffrage movement? And so in answer to that, a brief response would be the suffrage movement, at least in the United States, it began in 1848 at the Seneca Falls Convention in New York, where Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott helped to organize the first women's rights gathering. The convention produced a document called the Declaration of Sentiments. It was modeled after the Declaration of Independence, declaring that, quote, all men and women are created equal, unquote. From that moment, suffrage, that is, winning the right to vote, became the cornerstone demand of the women's rights movement. Activists believe that without the vote, women could not fully participate in democracy, nor could they advocate effectively for reforms in education, labor, property rights, or family law. The movement used multiple strategies. And so this is something I want to underscore. I want to emphasize so that we're not sitting around in the 21st century trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm very interested in movement tactics and movement strategies. And so here are some of the key strategies and tactics of the suffrage movement. Number one, lobbying and petitions to pressure lawmakers. I'm going to repeat that because we need some of that right now, today. Lobbying and petitions to pressure lawmakers. Number two, public education campaigns. For example, speeches, pamphlets, and newspapers. Now, if you fast forward to today, the 21st century, I would like to think that this podcast is a public education campaign. So look at the influence of the suffrage movement on me. Again, they had different technology back then, speeches, pamphlets, and newspapers. So imagine how much more we can do with all of the technology we have to develop public education campaigns. Number three, civil disobedience, such as attempting to vote illegally. What if sometimes what is considered illegal should be legal? I just want you to think about that. How many things throughout American history were at one time considered illegal, but they really should have been legalized? They really should have been legal. And last but certainly not least, number four, this is the fourth strategy and tactic of the suffrage movement: militant tactics. Militant tactics. Oh, yes. Such as parades, hunger strikes, and even picketing the White House. Woo! So these are some of the strategies and tactics. They didn't just have one, they had multiple strategies and tactics. I'm just going to lay it out for you one more time in case you're taking some notes. Classes in session. Come on. Get your public education lesson. Whew. Can y'all feel that? I'm talking to the people in my audio engineer. Here we go. The strategies and tactics of the suffrage movement. Number 1, lobbying and petitions. Number 2, public education campaigns. Number 3, civil disobedience. And last but certainly not least, number 4, militant tactics such as parades, hunger strikes, and even picketing the White House. This long struggle culminated in the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, which finally guaranteed women the right to vote in the United States of America. So I just want you to think about that. Let's slow down and really meditate on that for a moment. Women have only had the right to vote in the United States of America a little over 100 years. So we're talking about historical amnesia today. Next, I think it's important for us to explore the major goals of the suffrage movement. The movement's central goals were clear: securing the vote for women. I'm purposely saying it slowly so nobody gets confused. That is the central goal, or was the central goal, rather, of the suffrage movement: securing the vote for women. But suffragists also envisioned a broader transformation of society. This is one of the things that has always fascinated me about feminism, about women's rights struggles, is that it always seems to extend far beyond gender justice. And so that's something that's going to be key for us to explore the expansive nature, if you will, of the suffrage movement. So by envisioning a broader transformation of society, the suffragists sought to establish women's political equality with men, open educational and professional opportunities, protect women's rights in marriage, property, and employment, challenge deeply ingrained cultural beliefs about gender roles. It seems to me that we still need a lot of these today. I just want you to think about that. It was about much more than ballots. It was about women claiming their rightful place in democracy and reshaping the very definition of citizenship. This is really profound because there are a lot of folks who are taking voting rights for granted in the 21st century, in our epoch, in our era, in our time. And I think by going back and revisiting the suffrage movement, it just gives us a reminder of how hard, how long folks had to fight to get the right to vote, something that many people right now take for granted. Now we move on to a discussion of some of the most prominent women of the suffrage movement. For me, it's very important to name them. Naming, as a feminist act, the importance of calling folks by their names is really important. And as you might imagine, some of the women's names who became household names in their struggle for suffrage were primarily white women. Again, we've got another segment coming up momentarily. But because America was so racially divided at this time in the late 19th century, heading in obviously to the early 20th century, and again, this is all pre-civil rights movement. So I'm being historically accurate by talking about Jim and Jane Crow. What's up, Pauli Murray, who contributed the concept of Jane Crow, because it's something that there was some special discrimination and oppression that Black women were facing under racial segregation. Anyway, so some of the most prominent white women of the suffrage movement would be Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She was a leading theorist who co-authored the Declaration of Sentiments, and she helped found the National Woman Suffrage Association. The National Woman Suffrage Association. Next, Susan B. Anthony. So I think, again, these are two of the names I think at the very least we got exposed to in K through 12. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony, perhaps the most iconic suffragist. She tirelessly campaigned, gave speeches, and was famously arrested for attempting to vote in 1872. From Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, we go on to somebody like Alice Paul. She was, from a younger generation of activists, but she brought some militant tactics to the United States after studying the British suffrage movement. She organized the 1913 Women's Suffrage Parade in Washington, D.C., and she led the picketing at the White House. And last but certainly not least, Carrie Chapman Catt. She was the president of the National American Woman Suffrage Association. She devised the winning plan that helped to secure the 19th Amendment. So these women played crucial roles, but they were not alone. So again, this is where you can see this podcast is produced by the Center for African and African American Studies. So I'm always going to be looking and say, well, what did Black folk contribute to any of these great causes? I think that that's really important for us to really sort of turn some attention to African American contributions to whatever movement, whatever cause, whatever art form or music that it is that we are discussing. That for me stays top of mind. And that's why we still have a need for African American studies. So anyway, these women that I just called out, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Alice Paul, and Carrie Chapman Catt, they were not alone. The movement was vast and often divided. I'm going to repeat that because somebody's trying to get it twisted. They want to wax nostalgic up in here. The movement was vast and often divided. Divided by strategy, divided by class, and often most especially divided by race. Now, let's take a look at some of the prominent African American women in the suffrage movement. So African American women faced a double burden, if not, I would argue, a triple, quadruple burden back then. But the conventional narrative is that African American women faced a double burden during this time period, fighting both sexism and racism. And yet they made powerful contributions to the suffrage movement. Some of those iconic African American women in the suffrage movement include Sojourner Truth. She was formerly enslaved, and she famously delivered the "Ain't I a Woman" speech in 1851, linking the abolition of slavery, the ending of slavery, with women's rights. That is Sojourner Truth, and we're talking about her famous "Ain't I a Woman" speech from 1851. After Sojourner Truth, we have to go directly to Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells, also known as Ida B. Wells Barnett. She was a journalist and the most illustrious anti-lynching crusader in the history of the United States of America. She insisted that racial justice and women's suffrage were inseparable. So essentially, civil rights, right, and women's rights are inseparable. Racial justice and gender justice, Ida B. Wells said, they are inseparable. You cannot delink them. So here's some of the seeds of intersectionality in both Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman, right? I'm black and a woman. I'm fighting against racism and sexism. And then, of course, Ida B. Wells, who links racial justice with gender justice. Ida B. Wells famously refused to march at the back of the 1913 Women's Suffrage Parade. So again, I've got to talk about it. As much as I admire the suffrage movement, the way that many of the white suffragists ill-treated black women is shameful. So you're fighting for gender justice, but not racial justice. You're fighting for women's liberation, but you're not willing to fight for black liberation. Something's wrong with that. I'm so sorry. We got to tell the truth today. This little lesson on the suffrage movement. So Ida B. Wells refused to march at the back of the 1913 Women's Suffrage Parade. Woo! Next, we go to Mary Church Terrell. Mary Church Terrell, one of the first African-American women to earn a college degree. She co-founded the National Association of Colored Women. That's what it was called, the National Association of Colored Women. And the motto of the National Association of Colored Women was lifting as we climb. Lifting as we climb. So with the motto, you can see they wanted to advance both racial and gender equality. So this is where you can see many of the African-American women then are going oftentimes above and beyond some of their white sistren suffragists, because they're not simply fighting for gender justice. They also are struggling for racial justice. Really, really important to underscore this right here, right now. Last but certainly not least, when we start talking about iconic, prominent African-American women in the suffrage movement, last but certainly not least, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. She was a poet, a novelist, and an activist, and she reminded white suffragists that the struggle for freedom and equality must be shared. So this is during a time of enslavement. Frances Ellen Watkins reminded her white sisters, hey, listen, black freedom is deeply and profoundly connected to gender equality. So we absolutely must have both racial justice and gender justice. It's not either or, it needs to be both and. This is one of the most profound contributions that African-American women made to the suffrage movement. You see, it's these women who broadened the movement's vision, connecting suffrage to civil rights and social justice. Their activism laid the groundwork for later fights against segregation and for black voting rights. Fights that continued long after 1920. So you can see here, it's important when we start talking about some of the great and iconic movements in American history and culture, it's important for us to dig deeper, right? To not keep it at a superficial level, but to really sort of go deeper and to historically ground ourselves and to do our own research. You can't just depend on your teacher to teach you everything. What we need to practice is some self-education. You know, that's one of the most profound feminist principles, self-education. And we also know that's one of the key principles of African-American culture. Think about somebody like Frederick Douglass, who had to teach himself to read and write. This is powerful, this whole notion of self-education. And so if you really, really want to go beyond what's happening right now, if you really want to explore some alternatives, perhaps offer up some alternatives, you have to practice self-education. You're not going to get that by just reading the newspaper and watching a news report, or even sitting in a college classroom. What's up to my students? I love you, little round heads. I hope all I can do is inspire you to practice lifelong learning. That's what I'm doing. That's why this podcast is so exciting for me, because it exemplifies my commitment to lifelong learning and to public education. Ouch. Yeah.
Are you ready to dive deep into the rich histories, cultures, and arts of Africa and the African diaspora? At the Center for African and African American Studies, affectionately known as The Cause, we're leading the way in research, arts, and student engagement at the University of Colorado, Boulder. The Cause is more than just a research center. It's a space where students, faculty, artists, allies, and activists come together to explore African and African American experiences, from historical legacies to modern cultural expressions. And at the heart of it all, our students, playing a central role in everything we do. They're the future of this important cultural legacy, working side by side with faculty on groundbreaking projects and events that impact not just the campus, but the community and wider world. Research projects and events that impact not just our beloved CU campus, but the community and world at large.
Our mission? To foster academic excellence, social responsibility, and artistic expression, with programs that inspire leadership and advocacy for social justice. Whether you're interested in visual arts, music, or deepening your understanding of African American culture, The Cause is the place for you.
But we can't do it alone. The Cause relies on the generous support of our community to continue making a difference. By giving to the Center for African and African American Studies, you help us expand research, create opportunities for artists, support our students, and drive meaningful social change. And right now, your gift will go even further. All donations will be matched by CU Boulder Chancellor Justin Swartz for up to $1 million or until May 30th, 2026. To make your impact today, visit colorado.edu/center/cause and click on Support the Cause. Every contribution, large or small, brings us closer to a future of unity, knowledge, and transformation.
So, if you're looking for a community where history, culture, and creativity converge, visit the Center for African and African American Studies at CU Boulder. Come join The Cause and be a part of a movement for unity, knowledge, and social change.
Learn more and give today at colorado.edu/center/cause. We can't wait to welcome you to The Cause.
So now we move from, our discussion of some of the most iconic members of the suffrage movement to looking at the ways that the suffrage movement influenced the women's liberation movement. So the victory of the 19th Amendment in 1920 was monumental, but it was not the end of the struggle. A luta continua. Many women, particularly non-white women in the South, still faced barriers like poll taxes, literacy tests, and intimidation. Yet, the suffrage movement inspired future generations. In the 1960s and 1970s, the women's liberation movement drew on suffragists' legacy. Leaders like Gloria Steinem, Angela Davis, and Shirley Chisholm connected the right to vote with broader demands for reproductive rights, workplace equality, and an end to gender discrimination.
Mrs. Chisholm, how do you view the woman's role in modern society?
The woman has a very important role to play in modern society because I happen to feel that women are a little bit more sensitized to the problems that concern families, the problems that have to do with education, the problems that have to do with social welfare measures. Women are a little bit more sensitized to these issues, I feel, than men, and I happen to believe that women need to come forth much more forcefully at this juncture and assume a much more important role.
The through line is clear. If you want to see it, you can definitely see it. If you want to feel it, you can definitely feel it. The through line is clear here. Suffrage, in many people's models, was the first wave. And the women's liberation movement, that was the second wave. And today's fights for intersectional feminism represent a kind of third or fourth wave. Now, the conventional wisdom is each wave stands on the shoulders of the last. And then there's a sense in which within the world of Black feminism, it's important for us to disrupt the wave model. Because often looking at these waves, some people are only sort of looking at the peaks and they're not exploring the valleys. And it's often in the valleys where you have some of the most brilliant BIPOC feminist contributions, some of the most brilliant BIPOC, Black and brown and Indigenous women, right? Contributions to movements, to what it means to be a woman, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a granddaughter. We can't just look at the peaks, but if you really want to get a sense of what it is that we're talking about, you have to take into consideration the valleys. With this episode, I'm attempting to offer a more expansive interpretation of the suffrage movement. I think that there's a tendency to oftentimes take on only the most notable folks. And for me, even within the world of rap music and hip hop culture, I'm always going to be sort of looking at the underground, looking at the folks who are in the margins and they're not necessarily at the center. For me, it's always important. You can clearly see I'm influenced by Bell Hooks. One of my favorite books by Bell Hooks is called Feminist Theory, subtitle From the Margin to the Center. And so when we start talking about Black feminism, it's really important to meditate on the margins, not simply who is raised up, but who isn't, and ask ourselves why. All right, so we've reached the point in the show where we have a poetic pause, and I've made reference to this concept earlier in the show of calling women by name, calling them by name. There's a kind of specificity that is often lost in a sexist society and a patriarchal society. And so this poem actually is called Call Them by Name. And it's a tone poem. I'm seeking to sort of reimagine what the world could be like and feel like if we could one day topple patriarchy, if we could one day sort of challenge sexist socialization, which is ubiquitous, which has been normalized. And so, yeah, this piece, Call Them by Name, is something in that vein, almost a kind of inversion of the world that we currently live in. Call them by name. Call them by name, those 10,000s of sister warriors that fight and are fighting, sometimes silently, so that we might be free. Let the air echo with names like Harriet, Sojourner, and Amy Jacks Garvey. Let us call on Septima Clark, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, and Margaret Murray. Call them by name, those millions of faithful followers who lead our supposed leaders, often before they're able to lead themselves to the bathroom, preparing meals, mending worn socks, and teaching Sunday and public school, but also raising young men and women to be nobody's fool. Yes, call these sisters by name, these women warriors, mothers, and queens. As James Baldwin once said, they are many thousands gone. Those whose hands have the ability to heal the sick and afflicted, leaning into the blue midnight with their desperate moans. Please call them by name, those anonymous community caretakers and cultural workers, women like my grandmothers, Mama, Lizzie Mae, and Mama Rita. My great aunt, sweet Aunt Charlene, and my mother, dearest Marilyn Jean. Those women folk who fill church pews, who are both Christian and faithful, paying their tithes and dues. Call them by name. And when you call, expect to get a response. Because, as my grandmama say, folk don't call less than they want something anyway. Call them by name. That black radical diva nation that specialize wholly in the impossible, calling on warrior women such as Maria Stewart, Mary Church Terrell, and Ida B. Wells, calling on women warriors like Frances Harper, Mary Ann Shadd, Anna Julia Cooper, and Angela Davis, invoking the names of the freedom-fighting mothers, those strong-worded and spirited warrior queens, the Mary McLeod Bethunes and Marilyn Jeans, soft enough to love you and allow you to love them, hard enough to beat your behind when you needed a whipping. These mothers, brown, black, blue, and bruised from successive centuries of unwarranted abuse, must now and forevermore be called by their names. Anything less is disrepute. Call them by name, the way you do a Frederick Douglass, a Booker T. Washington, a W.E.B. Du Bois, a Marcus Garvey, a Malcolm X, or a Martin Luther King, and realize that attached to each name is a key to the mystery of our history. Call them by name, and you shall hear tales that have longed to be told, of grandmothers rocking grandchildren on their knees, reminding them, as Tracy Chapman recalls in song, that all that you have is your soul. Yes. Call them by name. Reify them no more. There are no generic black women, but there are beautiful mothers. To speak a name is to speak a history, to tell of past triumphs and defeats, of saddened mothers and queens reigning in their glory. Call them by name. Do not take away the tone, the beauty, and simplicity of a name. And with each name, as I've said before, there comes a history. But also, as Toni Morrison reminds us, a rememory. And for the few who know, perhaps an eternity. Call them by name. Call them by name. or else for all of the nameless, erased women of the past, it shall be you they blame. You better do right and call them. Go ahead. Call them. We can do it together. Let's call them by their names. Oh, the power of poetry. Sometimes I get carried away. I get taken away, swept up in the power of poetry. I hope you enjoyed that. And so now it's time for our call to action. The suffrage movement reminds us that democracy is never finished. It must be expanded and defended by each generation. Stanton, Anthony, Wells, Terrell, and countless others struggled so that women could enter the voting booth. But today, women's rights are still contested. From fights over reproductive freedom to battles against gender-based violence to struggles for equal pay and political representation, the cause of gender justice is unfinished. So here's our call to action. Honor the suffragists, not only by remembering their courage, but also by continuing their work. Vote in every election. Mentor young women leaders. Stand in solidarity with women across the globe still denied basic rights. And never forget, democracy thrives when every voice is heard and every vote is counted. Before I let you go, I just want to tag the special suffrage movement playlist that I have put together for you, titled From Suffrage Songs to Feminist Anthems. And as you listen to this playlist, note this playlist is both a soundtrack and a history lesson. It honors the songs of women who demanded justice, freedom, and equality in their own time, while amplifying the voices of artists still calling for change today. From the parlor songs of the 19th century suffrage movement to the anthems of the civil rights era and the feminist pop hits of the 21st century. These tracks remind us that music has always been one of the most powerful weapons in the struggle for democracy. So please check out the suffrage playlist, From Suffrage Songs to Feminist Anthems. All right, we got to close out. I got to get out of here. I hope that this episode has been as edifying for you as it was for me. I mean, researching and getting ready to do this episode, I learned so much. And so I hope that this episode will spark your curiosity, will get you out to your local library, where you can learn more about some of these iconic figures, about this incredible movement that has had such an impact and has been so influential on movements of our time and shaping our democracy in the 21st century. Again, I don't think we're really going to be able to understand democracy in the 21st century unless we understand the long struggle for democracy throughout the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. So it's really important to connect some of the dots. And I really want to shout out my colleagues, my librarians, not simply at Norland Library at the University of Colorado Boulder, but also my special librarians at Boulder Public Library, particularly the main branch. I'm shouting you out. Boulder Public Library main branch, what's up? Yeah, I could do this all day, but I got to let you go. All right. Y'all take really good care of yourselves. Yeah. Mentor, inspire, support, stand in solidarity with girls and women, not simply here in the United States of America, but all around the globe. Special shout out to the girls and women of the global South. This has been The Cause, conversations on music, history, and democracy. I'm Raylan Rabaka, and I want to thank you for listening. Until next time, keep fighting for freedom, justice, and equality, and keep exploring great causes. Take care. Peace. Woo! I think we did it. That's another one. We got another. We got another one. Yo, can y'all feel that? We got another one. Whew. I got to get up out of here. Turn the mic off. Are we on? Are we off? Are y'all still recording all it? Yo, turn it off.
Thank you for joining us for The Cause Podcast with Dr. Raylan Rabaka. For your letters, questions, and suggestions regarding the podcast, email us, thecause@gmail.com. CAAAS. The Cause Podcast with Dr. Raylan Rabaka is produced and edited by John Arnold and is a production of the Center for African and African American Studies, The Cause, at the University of Colorado Boulder. For more information, visit us online at colorado.edu/center/cause. CAAAS.
Class is in session, so come and get your lesson. Ooh, The Cause Podcast. I love that. Do you love that?